With training camp less than 2 weeks away, there's a lot of noise regarding Miami's pursuit of Damian Lillard, but little actual clarity about where the Heat stands. Is Pat Riley in the front office playing with fire in their negotiations with Portland? And what teams might suddenly find themselves getting in Miami's way? We break down the latest news and more on today's Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. However you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg. Joining me as always, it's David Ramil. What's up, David?
Hey, not much, man. How was your trip? I know you took a nice long trip there. Everything good back on the home front and then abroad, across the pond. You went to Europe.
I can confirm reports that Europe is very far away, and it takes about 9.5 hours on plane to get there. I'm back from 10 days. I eventually do want to get to my top 5 Europe observations.
Okay.
But that's not why we're here today.
No, it's not.
We're here today to talk about Damian Lillard, who was not traded while I was gone. And instead, the debate rages on. The trade talks remain stalled, and the reports remain only the teensiest bit interesting. But we do have some new stuff from your Locked On NBA co-host, Matt Moore, from ESPN's Zach Lowe, from our friends Barry Jackson and Anthony Chang of the Miami Herald. But the spiciest bit came from Adrian Wojnarowski, who said that the Heat want Damian Lillard. They just want him for as little as they're going to have to give up. They're essentially daring Portland to go out into the marketplace, which Portland is doing, and see if they can find better. The goal isn't to just get Damian Lillard. It's to get Damian Lillard for as little as you have to give up to be able to still have the ability to put a team around Jimmy Butler, Lillard, Bam Adebayo in Miami. David, what do you think about this stance that the Heat have taken?
A couple of things. I think it's interesting, and we've talked about this before. Adrian Wojnarowski has kind of revealed himself to be somewhat of a mouthpiece for the Portland Trailblazers. Maybe not as blatant as some other local area reporters, but certainly he seems to be getting a lot of intel directly from the Portland front office. And the careful wording here, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was, a haphazard choice on his part to say that Pat Riley in the front office is daring Portland. But it has suddenly turned all of NBA fandom against Pat Riley, including some Heat fans, that they are daring the Portland front office to find another offer. It just makes absolute perfect business sense. Why would you go in there looking to buy something and say, tell me what you want, or I'll tell you what I've got. I've got this much money in my bank account, and this is what I'm willing to spend for whatever it is you have to sell. I don't understand. Has nobody ever negotiated anything when it comes to trades? And this seems to be the logical course of action here. I also understand Heat's perspective, or Heat fans' perspective, in terms of they want something done. This has been a couple summers now of being linked to various superstar players, whether it's Kevin Durant, Donovan Mitchell, Bradley Beal, etc. And Miami hasn't been able to close the deal yet, and it seems like they are quote unquote playing with fire. So I think it makes sense, the pursuit and the negotiation tactic. It's a little risky, but I think you have to kind of trust Pat Riley to do what's best for this front office. That eventually, if Portland comes back and says, no, that's not unacceptable, then Miami will play a different card and raise their offer significantly in order to land Damian Lillard. I think they're doing the right thing by being cautious and not bidding against anybody else, because there is no other bidder, or at least not a legitimate one. And I know we'll talk about some other potential suitors later in the show, but for now, it just doesn't seem like Miami's really got any kind of significant competition.
We do have some reports that maybe there is some other teams trying to get into this marketplace. And like you said, we'll talk about that in the next segment. But look, I've said this all along. The goal here is not to acquire Damian Lillard. The goal is to win a championship for the Miami Heat. So you can't just give up whatever it takes to get Damian Lillard if it means the team that Damian Lillard is joining isn't good enough to win the championship. And look, they're not going to give up Bam and Jimmy Butler, and we know that.
Right.
But just Dame, Bam, and Jimmy isn't enough, right? You have to keep something there around them. You have to have a top 7 at least that makes sense, at least a top 6 that makes sense of guys who you trust in a playoff setting. You look at the free agent market. Kelly Oubre is gone, right? Christian Wood is gone. There's not a whole lot of people out there. Austin Rivers apparently told Bill Simmons that he would love to play for the Miami Heat. I like Austin Rivers fine. I don't know
Good
that he's
option.
the guy that's replacing everybody if you trade everybody from the bench.
Absolutely
So
not.
it's like you got to keep something there. And I also understand, like, look, I said this was the teensiest bit interesting only because I don't know that this is extremely new news. You
Right.
mentioned the wording by Woj, and that's almost the most interesting part of this report is just the wording.
Yeah.
The kind of incendiary, like daring Portland to go out into the marketplace, which Portland is doing. It's like, what of all of this do we not known yet? We know that Miami is short rolling Portland. We know that Portland is trying to find better offers elsewhere. We know that those offers don't exist right now. We know that Damian Lillard wants to play in Miami or else. Like, none of this is actually new news. And what's so funny to me is that we also, in all this reporting, we've been told that the Heat and the Trailblazers haven't talked since July.
Right.
So nothing is happening other than us talking about it outside and just finding new ways to phrase things. That better offer doesn't exist. It hasn't existed. It won't exist. If Portland is looking for that Kevin Durant, Rudy Gobert type of offer, it's not happening, and it shouldn't happen, right? It shouldn't happen because as good as a player Damian Lillard is, he's 33 years old. He's a smaller guard. He doesn't fit on every team. If you're already a team with a small guard, we've seen this happen with Damian Lillard in his prime and CJ McCollum in their prime. Couldn't get over the hump. They're not a functional defense when you have two small guards. The Heat just happen to be a good team for Damian Lillard. And maybe there are some other interesting teams for Damian Lillard, but maybe those teams also don't want to give up what it might take to beat Miami's offer, which I actually think is pretty good. I think it's an okay offer for a guy making a ton of money who doesn't fit with a lot of teams, who's kind of approaching the twilight part of his career. So I just find the whole discourse of this kind of exhausting. I was honestly glad to get away from it for 10 days.
I can totally imagine, and I kept seeing regular pursuits and wondering, should I just record a solo episode just to get into the latest? But all of it was so incendiary and not really saying much at all at the same time. A lot of subjective takes about what Miami should do, what Portland should do, what Miami's doing, what Portland isn't doing, et cetera. And it doesn't seem like there are any actual kernels of information here. And again, I agree with your point. We've said this pretty consistently here, that if another team, and we'll talk about some of those offers, whether it's Toronto or Chicago or Milwaukee or anybody in the Eastern Conference, if they're willing to put up something that's better than Miami's proposed trade package, which may be in the low ball area or not, why wouldn't Portland have taken it by now? Whether Cronin was on vacation or whether he's been back and fielding calls over the last couple of weeks, and there's been some traction, there's been some steam on this, it doesn't seem like there is a better offer because right now Portland hasn't taken it. And so I think Heat fans just need to kind of chill a little bit. I know there's a sense of urgency.
What about that whole idea that what if Pat Riley blows this by playing it this way? I've seen that since I've been catching up. I just don't agree with it. Again, the idea here, if he doesn't trade everything for Damian Lillard, that means he doesn't think that what he trades for is turns into a championship-worthy team. So if your goal as a Heat fan is just to cheer for Damian Lillard, then yeah, maybe in that sense, Pat Riley did blow it. But the goal is to win a championship. And if you have to trade everything, plus the future, by the way, David, like we're talking about Nikola Jovic, Jaime Jaquez, all the first-round picks, it's like, what you can't trade it all. You just can't for a guy who's 33. As good as that team might be right now, you can't trade it all away.
No, I think there's a strong possibility that even if Miami doesn't get the trade done, this current version of the Miami Heat might be better than a depleted version of the roster built around us, a top three of Dame, Bam, and Jimmy. You've got depth. Look, there's a hole at point guard, and we don't know who that's going to be filled by in the starting backcourt, whether it's Josh Richardson or Tyler Hero or Drew Smith or Kyle Lowry or somebody else. We've talked about this at length of our season preview episodes. But you've got the depth, right? You're talking about sacrificing the young players and Jovic and Jaquez, a great wingman and Caleb Martin, Tyler Hero and his incredible scoring. Like, he was Miami's best and most consistent offensive player last season. And we're kind of overlooking that because of Miami's postseason run. And I understand why there's a perspective that maybe Hero might have plateaued or maybe he's reached his ceiling or something along those lines. But this version of this team as it's currently constructed before the trade even takes place is better than a depleted version with just Bam, Jimmy, and Dame.
Let's talk about what those other offers could look like, because I think it's a really good way to kind of frame
Yeah.
What this marketplace might actually look like behind the scenes. We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Heat. But first, a word from our sponsors.
Today's episode is brought to you by Jace Case. Everyone should be empowered to take care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. That's why Jace Medical offers the Jace Case. The Jace Case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you a peace of mind. So there, you're not just hoping that you have access to medication in an emergency situation. Jace Medical makes sure that you have the medication in hand. Jace Medical is simple. They handle everything from online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. There are some problems with supply lines. Maybe you might not be able to get the kind of medication you need. Well, Jace Medical makes sure that you do at your disposal right away. Don't get caught unprepared. Save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jace Medical, plus an additional $20 off if you use the code LOCKEDON at checkout at jacemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. And don't forget to use the promo code LOCKEDON.
Welcome back to Locked On Heat, and thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. We're going to talk about some third-team reroutes of Damian Lillard on the next segment. But right now, we're going to talk about the reporting from your friend and co-host on Locked On NBA, Matt Moore, that perhaps the Toronto Raptors or that other Eastern Conference team that might want to get in the mix for Damian Lillard. Let's talk about what this other stuff could look like, because there's been reports, again, from Woj here. Portland is going into the marketplace to see if they can find better. That has obviously gotten people in a tizzy. They're wondering, like, okay, Miami and Damian Lillard are working to suppress the market and all that stuff. And I'm not saying that that's not true. Yeah. But the whole Toronto Raptors thing here, I don't think that they're a viable contender for Damian Lillard. We know Masai Ujiri is like, he did the Kawhi thing, right? And that's sort of like why people are including the Raptors in all these conversations. But this time around, he doesn't have like a DeMar DeRozan and all these first round picks and all this other stuff to trade for what was at the time a distressed asset in Kawhi Leonard, who we didn't even know if he was good anymore, right? And that was before he won a championship basically by himself. He had won with the San Antonio Spurs before that, obviously. But I'm looking at Toronto. If you think that they're going to trade like Pascal Siakam, Scotty Barnes, OG Anunoby, even Jakob Poeltl, like, no way. They're going to be in the same space that Miami is in. Damian Lillard is 33 years old. He wasn't as young as Kawhi was back then. He's not on a one-year deal where you could just be like, all right, let's just roll the dice, and if it doesn't work out, we're off the money. He's making a ton of money. They're not trading any of those guys for Damian Lillard. More likely than not, their offer potentially would be a similar poo-poo platter to what it is that the Miami Heat are offering of take a Gary Trent Jr., take a Chris Boucher, take a Precious Achiuwa. Maybe if you really want to, we might consider throwing in our first-round pick, Grady Dick. Speaking of first-round picks, they even have fewer first-round picks than Miami can trade available. They can't trade a first-rounder until 2028 because the first that they're trying to that they already traded the Spurs for Poeltl in the deadline is locked up between 2024 and 2026. So they at most could trade 2 first-round picks, which is less than what Miami could trade at most if Miami unlocks OKC protections on that pick. So this idea that Toronto is just like, oh, yeah, we would have all this stuff that we could trade for Damian Lillard, but he just doesn't want to play here, and they're working against us to suppress the market. They don't have a bunch of stuff. They would want Damian Lillard to play with Siakam, with Barnes, with Anunoby, with Jakob Poeltl to go win a championship. So this idea that they're just like some sleeping giant that's just been not like closed off from the Damian Lillard club and they're still waiting in the line outside, it's completely untrue.
Isn't the sticking point whether or not Toronto and their GM tries to include Barnes, or whether or not he decides that Barnes might be part of that package? I mean, I think that's what changes, and that's what a lot of people have kind of pointed to as why Toronto has a quote-unquote better offer available than Miami, is that they might be willing to include Barnes, and then they would have to give up less in total, not as many picks or not as many other players, salary cap filler and things of that sort.
If they were willing to give up Scotty Barnes, this trade would already be done. Like you said this earlier. Like, what does Portland care if Damian Lillard doesn't want to play in Toronto? They've already made it clear they don't. And Scotty Barnes would be a blue chipper, but they weren't willing to trade Scotty Barnes last offseason for Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
So why would they do it for Damian Lillard?
I don't.
And by the way, I wouldn't do it. Like Damian Lillard, as much as he's as great as he is, a top 11 player in the NBA, like he's 33. He's a small guard. He's making a ton of money. Scotty Barnes is a awesome prospect. He won Rookie of the Year. I know he had a little bit of a down year and there's some stuff around him, but they're committed to him so much that they fired Nick Nurse because he couldn't get through to Scotty Barnes. Like they're not trading Barnes for Dame. Like I don't know why you people even think that that's even on the table. It's not.
And they kind of just went through this, right? I mean, they lost Fred VanVleet in free agency. They already had an undersized guard. I mean, it's not to say that VanVleet and Lillard are at the same level, but I mean, does Lillard raise their ceiling that much more significantly than VanVleet did, especially if you have to give up core players in order to do so, and a nice young prospect in Barnes and anything else?
To your point before, like, would you rather have VanVleet, Siakam, Barnes, Anunoby, and Poeltl? Right. Or would you rather have Damian Lillard and Poeltl? Like whatever's left. To your point, like with Miami, it's you've got to do the calculus. It's not just go get Damian Lillard at all costs. As much as we love the star acquisitions and the names and all these things, of course, we love that stuff. But the goal isn't to get the star. The goal is to get the star to win a championship. And if you have to trade so much of that stuff to go get that star that you're no longer a functional championship contender, then you just don't do it. And I think that's sort of where Pat Riley is coming from is, look, if you have a legit offer, go get it. Please go get the better offer. And then we could talk. Right. But until then, this is the best offer because what I just laid out by Toronto, Gary Trent Jr., Chris Boucher, Precious Achiuwa, and maybe 2 first-round picks, maybe. That's not better than what Miami has to offer. I'd rather Tyler Hero than any of that stuff.
Yeah,
anybody.
I mean, look, I know that it's been kind of strange in the coverage of Nikola Jovic and everything else like that, but I still see him as a higher ceiling player than Precious Achiuwa. And if Achiuwa is going to be like the centerpiece of that trade, I just don't see it. I don't really get. I could see that he fits a position of need. They need a big there in Portland, etc. But I think he's more of a tweener, and we saw that in Miami. We've seen it play out in Toronto. He's up and down. He's year 4 of his NBA career, and he really has yet to do much of anything that really stands out.
And the book on Precious is kind of out there. He didn't really work with Spo in Miami. There's some conflict there. There's conflict very clearly with Nick Nurse and Achiuwa last year. Those are 2 championship winning head coaches. The book's a little bit out on Precious Achiuwa, and I don't know that he's like he might be considered even a distressed asset at this point, more so than like kind of a centerpiece of a trade. So there's that. So I'm discounting Toronto as an option unless they wanted to put any of those guys on the table that I mentioned, which again, they're not going to want to do that. They're going to want to
Milwaukee.
Milwaukee's interesting, and I'm glad you bring that up, and you brought them up in the last segment. The whole Giannis part of this is so interesting. Giannis giving these 2 interviews talking about, hey, if I can't win in Milwaukee, I'm basically going to ask to be traded. He could be on the market a year from now. Less than 12 months from now, Giannis could be legitimately a guy on the market that teams can trade for. And I think this helps Miami's case to acquire Damian Lillard. Because there's going to be a lot of teams that might have, you know what, we started the season 2-5. Let's just kind of throw our assets at Damian Lillard. Let's just add him to the mix and see what happens. There's going to be a lot of teams trying to keep their powder dry, I think, and want to keep their assets as long as the Giannis possibility is out there. Because Giannis is, I don't have to say it, like that's a franchise-altering game changer. He makes billions of dollars for your organization. Like he is a no-brainer. Go get that guy. The Heat don't have enough assets to be in the Giannis chase as it is right now with or without Damian Lillard. So in a trade. So It's like, go get Damian Lillard if you're Miami. Like they've already kind of gotten committed to the idea of trading for Dame, but it could take whatever, like, again, I don't think that there are any real contenders out there for Dame, but if there ever was going to be one, those teams like Brooklyn, for instance, they're going to be like, why would we trade for Dame when we can wait 9 months from now and potentially land Giannis, right? Like just the idea of being in the market for Giannis is better than having Damian Lillard right now for, I would say for 28 franchises in the NBA.
And I've heard that Drew Holiday is like a major point of contention for Giannis and their ability to keep Drew on that roster. He'd have to be included or traded in that acquisition of Lillard. And if that's the case, then you're playing with fire more than anything that Pat Riley has or hasn't done. And if you're going to piss off your franchise player that's already brought you the first championship in 50 years, then I don't see why you would trade away one of his best friends or one of the guys that has helped.
And go back the other way. Why would Portland want Drew Holiday?
That's it. Yes. Yeah, I don't expect them to want Kyle Lowry, but this is more about everything else that Miami might be able to include in their trade package. So, I mean, I know that Drew is a better player than Lowry.
Milwaukee, I think, has 1 first-round pick, no second-round picks because they traded them all for Jay Crowder, who didn't play for them in the playoffs. They've got Drew Holiday, who you might be able to trade to a third team for a first-round pick. Okay, cool. Now you have 2 first-round picks. That's as many as Miami has at minimum, plus the Tyler Hero and stuff that they can include. Milwaukee has no good young players. That's kind of the issue that Giannis is staring at right now. Like, Milwaukee doesn't make sense as a destination for Damian Lillard, even a little bit. Like, not even a little bit. Like there's not, like, people are like, oh, what about this team? We know the 30 teams in the NBA. We've known these 30 teams in the NBA for 3 months now. There's not going to be a magic 31st team that comes up with some magic trade offer that's like, oh, yeah, we never thought about this one. We've thought about all of this already. There's no better trade out there. This is it. And by the way, I think it's a pretty good trade. I think the Heat's deal package is okay.
And it's not quite. I mean, you referred to it as a poo-poo platter. I know that's kind of been the standard approach around NBA circles is that Miami's not offering much. But I think you don't have to talk yourself into it. We're not trying to convince anybody or put the wool over anybody's eyes. I think there's legitimate good players that are going to be included in whatever deal is possible. I just wanted to throw this hypothetical out. I know this completely changes the course of our show here, but let's just say Joe Cronin just says, I don't give a damn what Miami, even if they offered Bam Adebayo, I'm not sending Lillard there because he screwed everything up. And they want to send him to Milwaukee. They're willing to accept whatever Milwaukee does offer. And they have to move Drew Holiday as a result. Would it behoove Miami to get in on that and try to get Drew Holiday? If they can't get Lillard, would it make sense for them to try to pluck Holiday from the Bucks?
I think it's a great topic to tackle in the next segment after this break, David.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, customers get $200 on bonus bets. Guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's right, just $5. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Can Tua throw for over 400 yards this upcoming week? I think it's a distinct possibility.
Can he?
That offense.
I'm wondering if he won't.
That offense. I'm telling you, I've watched football again for the first time in many years. I had taken a long hiatus.
Hear that, Dolphins? You even got David back in on the Dolphins train here.
I've watched them both. Hey, Raheem Mostert, he looks amazing. Tyreek Hill looks incredible. Yeah, this is really, really, really a fun team to watch, especially on their offense. And they do just enough defensively.
Just don't even trade for Damian Lillard. Just throw Tyreek Hill in on the court. He'll just put him at some position. He'll figure it out.
Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure that you're subscribed on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. Before we get to the latest report from the Miami Herald, I want to answer the hypothetical that you brought up about, okay, let's just say Portland's like, we're going to trade Damian Lillard to Milwaukee. We're going to take Drew Holiday and try to flip him to a third team. Should Miami get involved as that third team from Drew Holiday? The short answer to that is yes. Drew Holiday is an awesome player. I absolutely adore Drew Holiday. You put him and Bam and Jimmy Butler on the court together, and teams won't score. Teams will just literally score 0 points against the Miami Heat. They will not score points. Especially you can keep Caleb Martin, like it's done. Like, but yeah, I gotta get back to it. It's like, what are you offering Milwaukee, or I guess Portland in that scenario? Is it like, would you give up on Tyler Hero for Drew Holiday? I don't know. I don't know that I would. Would you? Okay, so we're talking about
Kyle Lowry and a pick.
Kyle Lowry and a pick. It's like, okay, if it's Kyle Lowry and a first, I'll listen to that. But again, I don't. As much as I love Drew Holiday, I don't know that he solves the basic problem for Miami, which is half court scoring. Sure. Like, if anything, that's Drew Holiday's postseason Achilles heel, is that he's not a great scorer in the half court, right? He's a very up and down catch and shoot guy from 3-point range. Defensively, it would be so enticing, but Miami's defense hasn't been the problem for a decade. So the short answer is I would at least explore it, depending on what it would cost. But if it cost me 1 first-round pick, I probably don't do it, and it would cost you a first-round pick. So I probably wouldn't go down that route. Would you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, it would be a tough pill to swallow for a lot of Heat fans that would want the explosive offense of Damian Lillard and the star power and everything else. But I think Holiday fits a nice need. He's kind of getting back and resetting what you wanted to get out of Kyle Lowry, which was a defensive-minded point guard that could shoot the ball on occasion and just kind of set the table and things of that sort. Holiday, not in the same kind of floor general model as Lowry, perhaps, but a solid enough playmaker, a good scorer, and as you mentioned, a fantastic defender.
So
and
if it's Lowry first,
Hero,
you would do it?
Yeah.
But if it cost you Hero, would you do it?
No.
I'm with you.
That.
Like, because I guess you're right. If you can get Drew, I mean, your starting backcourt could be Holiday, Tyler Hero, and then you've got Jimmy, whoever your power forward is.
And me, yeah.
And Bam, and you. Yeah, there you
go. Yeah, I'm starting a power forward. I mean, I think that's a good enough roster right there. I think that's certainly a contending roster.
Let's get to this from the Miami Herald.
Let's do it.
Barry Jackson and Anthony Chang reporting that if Lillard is traded to a team other than Miami, he's expected to ask to be traded to the Heat. This obviously is another sort of this is the feeling in league circles, right, David? Is that no matter what, Damian Lillard wants to get to Miami, and he's using these outlets to basically say, no matter what, I want to get to Miami. So even if Toronto trades for me, even if Milwaukee trades for me, even if Chicago trades for me, like whoever it is, I'm going to ask that team then to ask to get traded. This is a not so distant cousin to the thing that they just got fined for, which is if you trade for me, I'm not going to play for you, right? So, look, I don't know that he's going to get fined for this. It's not directly from him or the agent's mouth, at least because it's being reported and paraphrased here by whoever the sources of the Miami Herald is. So, I don't know. I don't know that would stop Portland from trading him to a third team, but it would probably stop me if I really believed that. If I was a third team from trading from Damian Lillard. But it's not the only thing. I keep getting back to this. It's not the only thing stopping me from trading for Damian Lillard. This is like third or fourth on the list behind positional need, the fact that he doesn't mesh well if you have another player his size in the lineup, and his age and his contract. Like all that stuff is above the list other than this hypothetical threat in a local newspaper that he might ask me to get traded if I trade for him.
I think this is why a lot of people think Toronto seems like a stronger candidate, because they did go through this, as you alluded to earlier, with Kawhi Leonard. They acquired a player who didn't want to go to Toronto because most players don't necessarily want to sign in Toronto, and they took a risk, and it paid off, obviously, in winning a championship. And so if it worked once in 2019, why not do it again? Well, I don't know that it's so easy to reproduce. I think that 2019 team, once they acquired Marc Gasol, also became the contender, and they certainly caught a lot of breaks along the way. Not to knock that championship or anything like that, but the fact that they went up against a very depleted Golden State team has to be taken into consideration. This roster, as currently constructed, if they were to acquire Dame Lillard and take that chance, and if he was to say, you know what, I tried to get to Miami, it didn't work out, I'm going to stay committed to Toronto, I still don't see them as strong a contender as that group a few years ago was. So I just don't see it as being as seamless a fit. Can I just also address, again, off the topic to some degree here, that people are kind of criticizing the Miami Heat mafia, media mafia, like Barry's reporting here on behalf of either Lillard's representation or somebody else. Like, that doesn't happen with 29 other teams. Like, teams will leak out this information for a purpose. Right. They want to stir something up, and these reporters will gobble it up because, hell, that's what gets the clicks.
Job. Yeah.
It's like, I've got to report this. I'm hearing this. They told it to me for a reason. I know that. I'm going in there, eyes wide shut, knowing exactly what I'm getting into. It happens all the way around. The fact that nobody's criticized Wojnarowski for clearly being listening to whatever information Joe Cronin and the Portland front office has, it just blows my mind.
It's up to you as a fan. And we've said this a million times on the podcast, David. It's up to you as a fan to discern the leaks. You just said it perfectly. Everything gets leaked for a reason. Everything is a leverage play. Every leak, everything, every report, according to sources, all of it is a leverage play. All of it is when it comes to these trade things. You've got to ask yourself, who are they talking to? Why are they talking to them? And why are they saying what they're saying? I'm with you 100%. The one thing I would say about the Miami Heat media mafia is the idea that the package is better than what I think a bunch of other people think it is. Here's my issue with that. Damian Lillard is a huge name. He's a star among stars in the NBA. And so I understand that you would think that he should garner something like the Kevin Durant thing garnered, especially because it was only a few months ago that happened. Right. But that's just not the case. Like, if anything, it's going to be closer to what Bradley Beal, again, a big star in the league for 10 years. It's going to be closer to what Bradley Beal got Washington because they traded him too late. Portland fans are mad at Miami because they want to be mad at Miami because they don't want to be – fans never want to be mad at their own team. Fans never want to be accountable. Fans don't want to take the blame. They just don't. They don't. So, of course, they're going to find Miami and Pat Riley and Miami Heat fans on Twitter and the Heat Media Mafia and all this stuff as the enemy. Of course, they're going to do that. But they're not the enemy. The enemy here, if you're a Portland Trailblazers fan, is your front office that waited too late to sign Damian or to trade Damian Lillard, traded CJ McCollum years ago and didn't reboot the team in any meaningful way. They were like, hey, we're going to trade a small guard because it's not working. And what are we going to do? We're going to replace him with a small guard who's younger and not as good, and Anthony Simons. Blame your front office for how this went. Damian Lillard doesn't have a lot of trade value, and we know that because he hasn't gotten traded yet for a lot of value.
It's like an angry ex getting pissed off at Lillard and the new partner, whoever they might seek, and everybody kind of saying, oh, they're a really good couple. They are a perfect fit. It makes so much sense. And not realizing that it was your parents or your in-laws or whatever, your family that kind of drove your partner away in the first place.
It's actually closer to this. It's actually closer to this, David. And it's a great metaphor. I like where we're going here because Portland fans were already mad with their front office for years. And then as soon as a new antagonist came by, they're like, no, it's actually their fault. It was their fault. This is like hating your girlfriend. Just hate it. She doesn't listen to me. Like, she just does. Like, we have nothing in common. She's so mean to me all the time. I can't stand her. Then they break up and she gets with a new guy. And you're like, actually, it was his fault all along. She was always after his heart. It was always that guy at work or whatever it was. Like, no, man, you hated her. And as soon as you get to be mad at somebody else, you hate that person instead. Like, it's just, this whole thing is so ridiculous.
It is. It has gone very toxic on all levels. And I hope I make a plea to Heat fans watching this show to just cool off, stay calm. We don't know when something's going to get done. There's no clear reporting on that. There hasn't been at any point in time. Anybody who suggests, it's going to get done. I mean, I've said I hope that it gets done, but I don't think anybody has. Well, a few people have clearly
nobody
said
knows when it's going to get done.
Right.
People keep asking me, like, when's this going to get done? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know when this is going to get done. If we knew when it was going to get done, everybody would know when it was going to get done, and then it would probably get done. So
where do you feel? I know you've been low on this anyway. What are the chances that it gets done by Media Day?
October 2nd.
Yes.
I actually feel a little bit better about it now getting done before Media Day, just because the discourse is starting to ramp up a little bit, and if that means that
more leaks on purpose, it's like
again, the idea that it's been leaked that these two teams haven't talked to each other means that people from these opposing front offices are telling media, no, we haven't talked to them. This is Portland trying to posture, hey, we haven't talked to Miami. We don't even really care about talking to Miami. Miami, where even is that? The one in Ohio, is that where the Miami Heat are based? Like, they don't, like, that's how they're acting. And then the Heat are like, Portland, oh no, we haven't talked to them. They know what our offer is. And by the way, they know what the offer is. And Portland knows what every offer would probably be for the most part. They have the trade machine just like anybody else, and they can kind of sense what Damian Lillard's value is at this point. So I don't know. I just now that people are starting to get back from vacation, myself included, I think maybe now we can get something done. Yeah. Maybe they were just waiting for me to come back from Europe.
I'd like to think that we have that kind of power and influence here in the Locked On Heat podcast. I just don't necessarily see it. But
I haven't heard that we don't.
No, you're right. You're right. This is the same kind of nebulous reporting that we're hearing about Lillard. It's like, are the teams talking? Is Locked On Heat controlling the process?
Is Locked On Heat really?
They could very well be behind the scenes. We are the mystery team. Our podcast is the mystery team.
I've talked to agents. I've talked to members of rival front offices. And nobody has been able to confirm that Locked On Heat is not pulling the strings on this thing.
I'd love to see it. I think, then we should be the ones to break the news when it happens. Screw you, Wojnarowski. I don't mean that.
I know. But if anything does happen on the Damian Lillard front, or if nothing happens, but it's worth talking about like we did today, we will do that here on the Locked On Heat channel. Subscribe to us wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe to us. Follow us on YouTube as well. If we're not talking about Damian Lillard, we will be continuing our player training camp preview series where we talk about things like their best case and worst case scenario. Will they even be on the team by the time the season starts? And of course, what Cheesecake Factory menu item represents them the best. So for now, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Follow us on your podcast app. David, thanks for joining me.
You got it. We're close to 10,000 subscribers. Make sure you hit that subscribe button.
What do the kids say? Bang it. What is it? Bang the subscribe button. Smash
You're
it.
asking me?
Smash it. Smash that subscribe.
Yes.